So hello everyone, welcome to this week's YouTube video. Now, those of you who are new here, I'm Mike Ingledew. I'm all about independent advice and guidance and training around the field of product support. Now, I have got a fan on behind me because the office is really warm today, and this is the third attempt at trying to record this, and I started getting a little bit of a sweat on, so hopefully it's not too distracting. If it's distracting, I'll put some music on so that we can all enjoy some music together when we all watch this back later on. Anyway, what am I going to talk about this week? Well, an interesting one, because I posted what I was going to talk about this week on LinkedIn, and my God, it generated a whole load of likes, shares, comments into me, emails into me, and let me tell you, far more than what I actually anticipated. So what I want to do is do a little bit of scene setting first. I think that's important. So if I look at my note, I've got my notes in front of me as always, just to kind of keep my old brain working. So what's really important here is it's not my job to criticize the specification community. Okay, I'm not going to throw stones, point fingers, or call names so that I can be later vilified by others. That's not my job. My job is to highlight what I think are risks, opportunities, threats, real world, and based on discussions with clients and trying to implement some of these specifications. It's really important that we accept and we acknowledge that a lot of people work very hard in the background on all of these specifications. Many you've probably never even heard of, but they're working exceptionally hard trying to make these specifications and other standards available to us so we can integrate our products in a support environment and a data environment. So I want to be sure that you understand that I'm not trying to point fingers, and anybody who's involved in the standard specification community, I am not criticizing. That's not my job. I don't want to do that. It's also important to remember that this is just my opinion. You can disagree with my opinion. You can send me your thoughts. You can make comments. You can debate with me what it is, the content of this video. So we're going to work through this very shortly. Now, the first point I want to talk about is ILS versus IPS. And this is a question that's not only come up at TDW Live, certainly over the last couple of years, but has definitely been another one that's been in some meetings that I've been involved with recently. And let me tell you, I've been involved in meetings where the discussion and the debate on ILS versus IPS has gone on infinitum. And this is with people in the standards and specifications community. So I think there's a real problem that they're not articulating it well enough why we're adopting this new approach to product support. And the answers that I get are everything from it's just a rebranding exercise, which is what seems to be the majority of what people are saying, because in Theresa May fashion, most of the people that I deeply respect in the market who have been around ILS and IPS far longer than I have are saying that, you know, nothing has changed, you know, but we all know what happened to Theresa May when she came out with the nothing has changed, the famous nothing has changed speech. And also I've had everything from the, you know, it's all changed, you know, and so I know that that's a debate that goes on infinitum. I really don't want to get into that today because, you know, when I've worked through 10,000i, I think it's erring more towards nothing has really changed. We're just doing something else. And that's the something else I'm going to talk about later on, because the something else is what I think the S-Series is trying to do. And I'm gonna say it in an Ingledew speak so we can all kind of just discuss it and debate it. So just remember, this is my opinion. You can change that. But my job here is to try and identify in a balanced way any risks, opportunities, threats, real world problems that are actually going to impact us all when it comes to trying to adopt these specifications. And some of it I grant you is not necessarily S-Series specific. It could actually just be any specification or standard that we're talking about here, because I think I've identified what I hope are real challenges that as a community we need to figure out a way of working together to our common goal is the success of our products, is the success of our customers, and not necessarily is it at the heart of all of the decisions that we make. So I'm increasingly being asked, should we adopt the S-Series? Is the S-Series something we should be investing in? And, because it's okay having all of these specifications and standards, but many organizations have invested in data structures. They've already invested in methodologies and approaches. They've already invested in IT infrastructure and software systems. They've already invested in partners and suppliers and business process. And so are we going to, throw the baby out with the bathwater and change everything? No, I think that, we have to have a balanced approach to all of these things. And I'm going to give you some kind of real world market kind of data points that I picked up at some conferences that I think, well, actually it makes a nonsense of some of what we're talking about. But it's also important that one thing I learnt at TDW Live last year, and I'll put the slide over my head now so you can read it yourselves, is let's just call him Dr. Mike. It's not, I know you're not, it's a little joke if you're at the conference last year, but Mike B from the UK MOD gave a presentation, and he talked about the flavors of IPS and the relationship to standards, and he talked about the relationship to how the UK MOD wants to achieve things going forward. Public knowledge, it was all given in a public forum, so I have no worries that MI5 or MI6 are going to come looking for me. So, but I got permission off Mike to actually take his slide, TDWify it, and turn it into something that I now, thanks to Mike, I now use on my, some other slides as well, but I use on my training. So there are different flavors of IPS. And what I didn't realize, according to Mike, who clearly knows way more than I do, that, the IPS is slightly different depending on which side of the pond you're on. And the definitions are slightly different, as I understand it. So what I want to do is I want to try and get to the issues that I think people are going to have with trying to adopt this. And, I think on the face of it, yes, okay, my customer's asking for it, let's do it. And, but we've had that in the past. If we're not learning from the past, then we are going to repeat it. And let me talk about, S1000D, for example. S1000D has been around for a very long time. And in the main, when I talk about maturity and software, etc., I am not referring to S1000D. I think we can all agree S1000D is mature, widely adopted, widely supported, and widely used. But let's also accept that in the past, and hopefully not so much now through things like this channel and training, etc., many were asking for S1000D and not actually really fully understanding what that meant. And I can list off projects that have had endless problems, budget overspend, technical documentation rework, have to then go and buy laptops, etc., because they didn't really understand what they were asking for and didn't know the level of investment up front. Are we in danger of doing exactly the same thing if we just go out there willy-nilly and say we want the S-Series, and that's the only way we're going to address product support data? And that worries me. So I'm going to talk about some of the elephants in the room, and those elephants are my elephants. You might have different elements and elephants, and feel free to send them over to me. But I hope what we can all agree is data is becoming increasingly important for product support. We only have to look at, this is just coming off the top of my head, so this analogy might not work. Yesterday, watching the football, and those of you who know, I watch Middlesbrough Football Club, and yes, we got hammered yesterday, but the stats that are appearing on the screen now is incredible from data that they're capturing in real time on how all of the players are working, and how all of the players are underperforming in certain areas, etc. That's all coming from increasing data that's being captured in real time from the players on the pitch, and then they're comparing it to other stats from other matches, etc. So I hope that analogy works. I think it worked pretty well for me, but I think we can all agree that data is pretty important, and is going to be increasingly more important. And the problem with data is, are we willing to share data? Are we willing to give access to data so we can make these decisions? And I'm not going to talk about any specific projects, but I think those of you who are will know who I'm referring to, is that there are some projects out there that have vast amount of data, but they will not share it with the customer. They will not share it with the operators of product. And this then makes a nonsense of all of this feedback, and how we are going to improve the usability, the streamlining our maintenance and that kind of thing around our product. And I think that's the biggest elephant in the room, is that we are not actually going to, we need to have something called a digital trust network. That's not something that I've invented. That was at the Support Chain seminar earlier this year here in the UK. And there were some pretty large organizations, Raytheon, MBDA Missiles, and sorry if I've missed anybody else, but there was a few of you that were there. And the reality is that you guys are already trying to address the trust between frenemies. You know, we might be friendly on one project, we might be enemies on another project. So, you know, and intellectual property must be protected. And so for me, I'm now thinking about, well, how are we then going to use this data to get the feedback that the customer needs, or the operator of an asset needs, to actually get this data insight. And I'm now thinking, well, are we going to have multiple or several data insight avenues where one prime will share certain statistics and another prime will share some, and you know, and now the customer is having to rationalize all of this, and so that troubles me a little bit, that, you know, we have to develop the trust in the supply chain, that we're willing to share data and we're willing to do it for the greater good, which is, we hope, our customers, the greater good. So I think that is, for me, one of the biggest problems, because obviously a lot of us are already doing things like S1000D, S2000M. However, to adopt the S-Series as a whole, you know, we have to upgrade our data in many respects. And are people going to do that? And, you know, if you talk to some platforms who are already using, let's just say 2000M data on the older versions of 2000M, they're saying they have terabytes and terabytes of data that is just, they're never going to migrate it. They're never going to be able to use it in the newer versions of specifications. But for newer platforms, of course, they're then going to look at the newer S-Series specifications, which then leads me to the second elephant in the room for me, which is maturity, not only of the specifications. I think there's a lot of talk about we're going to adopt these specifications when there's a question around the maturity. S1000D to one side, there's a maturity question, but not only of the specifications, but there's also a maturity question around software. And, you know, many software vendors are saying that they are supporting the S-Series, but actually when you start talking to them and say, okay, can you show me what you're doing, they're supporting elements of the S-Series, not the S-Series end-to-end integration, you know, deployment of data, feedback of data. I'm going to talk about one of my clients who is looking at doing something along these lines, which means that when I'm advising my clients, I have to say, okay, let's do it this way. Let's do data this way, but have a strategy for that when the software has matured, when all of the specifications have matured and all of the guidance has matured, then we're in a position where we can actually pull a lever and we can flip the data to a new ecosystem, if you like. So I think because the reality is, and you know, we have to bring the software vendors with us on this, because none of this is possible. None of this is possible without the support of software vendors. And, you know, over the years, we've seen the S1000D market balloon, and it started to, in my opinion, it's starting to, you know, come back in again, which is meaning that, you know, we're going to run out of choices for software solutions. So we need to bring and encourage the software companies onto all of the working groups. And I'm not talking about just the select few software companies that appear on all of these groups. I'm talking about everybody needs to come along and get involved and say, okay, how can we all agree that we're going to implement this for our customers? So we all are going to the greater good. The other issue, which is why, you know, TDW exists, is I'm still surprised around the thirst for knowledge around S1000D, technical publications, other methodologies for producing tech pubs. But the thirst for actually trying to understand what the S-Series is going to give us is out there, which is why, you know, we're investing in training courses. Other organizations are investing in training courses. You know, we see that there is you know, we only have to look at Kevin, I'm going to call you out. Babcock are putting on loads of job adverts on LinkedIn, trying to pull in some good quality people on LinkedIn. If you're out there looking for a good role, you know, follow Kevin on LinkedIn. But there is a distinct lack of skills in the market. And you know, when I'm doing a paper at the moment for a client and we're looking at the top 10 challenges that are facing the aerospace and defense domain, and number 8 or number 6 is the skill shortage and the threat of skill shortages. And what does that mean for product support and integrated product support? So not only do we have the data issue in terms of willingness to share, but we also don't necessarily have the software, the infrastructure, the capability to handle the levels of data that are going to be coming to us, the big data that's going to be coming to us from product and product feedback and doing all of that analytics type stuff. But we may not necessarily also have the people to deal with that. And of course, one of my final points is going to be, you know, the reality is that technology is going to address a lot of this, which I think is probably, in my view, the biggest threat to a lot of what we do. But I'll talk about it at the end. So I've talked about data, but also side by side with data is, you know, I'll talk about what I think S-Series is trying to achieve and what I think it's trying to achieve. But the reality is that when I'm talking to people about S-Series, and I talk to people who have been around this domain for a very long time, I'm talking about, you know, decades older than me, and I'm pushing on a little bit. They're saying we're already doing this. We're already catching all this data. We're already analyzing all this data. We're already making data-driven decisions. So, you know, do we need the S-Series? And I think the answer to that is yes. And why do I think it's yes? And I'll come on to a couple of other little things here shortly, what I think is slowing down the adoption and slowing down the implementation, or all projects taking it seriously. What I think the S-Series is doing, and this is where you can correct me, you can debate me, you can send me your thoughts. I think we are, through all of these specifications, and I'll put a slide up for those of you who are not familiar with what the S-Series is. Again, this is another slide from one of our training courses, is that we're formalizing the data relationship between all of these ILS, IPS data disciplines. So we're formalizing the relationship so that we can then maximize and share data across all of these disciplines to enable this product feedback. And that, for me, in a nutshell, is what the S-Series is trying to do. Again, you can debate me on that. The problem with that, of course, is that right now I can give you at least 4 or 5 examples where software companies have come to me and said, are there any example data sets yet? And of course, we have the S1000D bike, where you can go and download the bike data. You can have a look at S1000D structures, and you can kind of figure out what's going on for yourself. And the answer is no. And I have asked some key people in the domain and in the specification domain, and the answer is no, they don't exist. And so therefore, what does that mean? We're in the same problem we had in the early days of S1000D, where there was lack of examples in many respects, IETP deployments, using tablets, mobile, that kind of stuff. So software companies go make their own mind up. They go do their own thing. Now, we're in a unique situation here where I know many software companies are feeling and waiting for the market to mature. So some are kind of giving us a pseudo level of support, but some are also just sat going to say, well, they're not ready yet, so we're not going to go and invest in upgrading our S2000M systems or software because the schemas are broken, for example, is one thing I was told. So the reality is that there are no real good examples. So and some of the software vendors have showed with me what they're doing, and so then I can show my customers what's actually happening in the market. So I think that we need to develop some examples very shortly. I did some latest 2000M training for a client, and I asked if there was a provisioning project for the bike, which would make sense, right? Is there a provisioning project that exists for the bike? And I got no answers, nothing back. So, if we're trying to get everybody to understand these specifications and what they're trying to do, then let's flush out this bike. And I know there's lots of work going on in the background on this, so I'm kind of being a little bit naughty there. But, there is a thirst for knowing what these structures are going to look like and how they're going to look and what they should be doing with this software. So again, I've said that many organizations are already doing this, and we have this lack of maturity, the lack of actual data structures that can show the flow of going to and fro. And I know why this is happening. Is there are not many people that are actually paid to be in the specification development community. There's a select few that are paid via their organizations to be involved with all of these specifications, all of these standards. People like myself, all of the time that I give is voluntary. I give time for free. So I have to limit the amount of time that I can give on these groups. And by the way, if you want to get involved in any of these groups, hit me up on LinkedIn and I'll introduce you to the people in your geography who you need to speak to, because they need people to get involved. And that's organizational level. So if you're a software company and you want to get involved, if you are an ILS, IPS professional and you want to get involved, there are people that I can introduce you to that they will be more than willing to get you on board. So I think that, what we need to accept is the maturity level of the specs, the examples, the software is probably the biggest threat for the S-Series on its own. I think data sharing, data storage, data infrastructure is probably the next biggest risk for me, the willingness to do that. But I also think the biggest risk, and this is something that I'm doing, I'm actually doing some courses on this at the moment, but I'm also learning a tremendous amount about this, is AI and how AI is going to change the way that we access data, we use data going forward. And for me, the more I learn, the more I'm both excited and terrified by what AI can do today. It's absolutely incredible, some of the stuff that you can get an AI engine to do. And I'm going to talk about that at TDW Live this year. So I think that AI is going to materially affect a lot of what we do in IPS. And I personally think, this is just me, that some of us who are involved in technical publications will need to test and readjust our roles and what we're doing in terms of how we create data and how we publish data. So, so what do I think all of what I've spoken about is going to kill the S-Series? Well, I think there's a lot of momentum and a lot of discussion behind the S-Series. Certainly when we, and I, again, with the caveat that I worry that people are talking about it, but they don't necessarily understand what they're asking for or what they're going to be getting in the old S1000D ways. So I think that, we know that some projects have looked at the S-Series and gone, maturity's not there, software's not there, we're going to go the old way. Now, of course, if they're going the old way, that's a product that might be in service for 40, 50 years. There's some aircraft that are flying on Teesside here that they do some military testing. They've been around since I was born, 1969. They ain't going to change their data sets, are they? So, so I worry that that maturity thing is slowing us down, along with the slow release cycle. And that's what I wanted to talk about. The slow release cycle is, projects are coming online all the time. Everybody seems to be increasing on spending on new platforms, new projects. And, they're deciding now how they're going to define their data sets and data structures going forward. And I think that the lack of maturity is probably the thing that might be the biggest risk. But I don't think it's going to kill it completely, because we do know that a lot of, should we say, government level decision makers are saying that's the way we're going this way. And that's fine, that's your choice. And just accept that they're, industry might look and go, what you're talking about, we ain't going to be able to do this, not without having some good strategies in place. So I think we have to accept that there are gaps in the specifications, and we need to accept that there are gaps in knowledge and, of course, that software. So, but I did say that, I think we have to be cognizant of AI and what AI is going to do. I think it's materially going to disrupt a lot of what we do in our domain. And I think a lot of it's going to be for the positive, unless you're in content creation in terms of writing and that kind of stuff. I can see how it's going to materially impact the role of a technical author, for example. So, but I'll pull that apart at TDW Live this year. I think it's important that we pull that apart and say, how do I think AI today and how it's going to mature is going to do that. So, but the bottom line is, I know that if your customer is saying that you're going to do this, then you're going to do it. It's either that or lose the business, right? It's like many people just agree to doing S1000D because their customers ask for it so they can win the business, and then they go, oh bugger, what does this all mean? So, but that's kind of my thoughts. Those are my elephants in the room. And the reason I did a YouTube video on it is because I ask it in meetings and I get ignored, and I get kind of nervous giggles or nervous laughs. And, my job is to give my customers independent advice and guidance, so you can go and make your decisions around which way you want to go, and accept that there is going to be some pain, and accept there is going to be some investment. And but yeah, that's my thoughts. What are yours? Let me know what your thoughts are. If you're too shy, like many of you are, to leave comments or to post publicly on LinkedIn, contact me through LinkedIn and or just email me your thoughts. But I'd be keen to know what those of you who are involved in the ILS IPS community think. What do you think are the biggest risks facing the S-Series, and how can we collectively together help our customers who want to benefit from all of this data? They want to be a little bit more intelligent about the decisions that they make. Anyway, those are my thoughts. I'm Mike. Let me know what you think. Take care, and until the next one, I hope it doesn't generate too much of a bun-throwing debate starter, but let me know. Take care, guys.